Good evening, YouTube family. Good evening, YouTube family. This is Antoine sitting up in Ottawa, Canada, and we're back for three. This is our third consecutive week that we are coming to you with a discussion. This week's discussion is an interesting one, right? We actually kind of spitballed this one last week to see, how we would present it. And in all honesty, well, let me give you the topic first. The topic is get over slavery exclamation mark question mark, right? But it's going to splinter because that is a very broad highway to go down. It's obviously has a lot of different subjects under it that we can all hit on, and we'll go in some of those directions. But think about this. So, black people, we've been in the Americas now for at least 400 years, right? And we're coming to the point now where a lot of us, I believe, are waking up out of our slumber and we're saying, okay, we've been rolling over in the grave long enough. Our ancestors have been rolling over in the grave long enough. We've been dealing with this oppression long enough. Are we still under the yoke of systematic oppression? And if we are, what's the next step? So with me, I'm not going to discuss this by myself, right? First, we'll go out to CC Hills, Illinois, and I'll introduce Antoinette, my loving sister, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I appreciate the introduction. My name is Antoinette. My sister, I am also a farmer. That is my chosen profession and my passion, bringing healthier food to my community. Uh, Mother of one, and I do have some very interesting points that I think that uh, some very interesting perspectives as an entrepreneur that I will be bringing to the conversation. Thanks for the introduction again.
All right. And we have Dr. Anderson, Dr. and Daddy Anderson, all the way out in Louisiana.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? As my cousin stated, Dr. Anderson, Captain Anderson in the U.S. Army out here in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, Fort Polk, Louisiana. Um, and I look forward to this conversation. I do have some interesting perspectives to bring to this conversation, and hopefully we can, shine some light on maybe why the Black community continues to reference back to slavery and to the Jim Crow era, et cetera, et cetera. So I look forward to the conversation.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Why? Why do we keep referencing back to slavery at this point? And Antoinette, I'll pose the question to you first. You seem like you're just very excited to get this conversation going. Why is it that it seems that Black Americans can't seem to get over slavery?
Um, First off, it's only been 150 years or so since slavery's ended, and it's not time to be over it yet because we're not done getting out of the muck from it. We are still living with laws on the books that self-admitted racists created in order to hold us back, in order to um, unfairly enslave Black men and women once again, and to break up Black families. And until we're able to get rid of those laws and the intentions behind them in our government, we're going to need as Americans to talk about slavery, regardless of where you came from and how you got here. Because until those laws are fixed and the ability to create laws for those purposes is kind of a squashed out, we're going to have places where we need to grow as a country. So that's why we're not over it yet, because it's not time to be over it. That's my opinion.
Interesting perspective. A very interesting perspective. I think a lot of people share that same sentiment with you. All right, Dave, did you have something you want to spit on that?
Yeah, I guess I'll just piggyback on what Antoinette said. I think the reason why we still reference slavery, we still reference Black codes and the Jim Crow era is because we still deal with systemic racism. Essentially, there isn't true equality within our systems, within our judicial system, just use that as an example. Fortunately, our community is still dealing with some inequalities. So I think until we can rid our system of racism, um, us as a community will continue to kind of reference slavery.
Okay, great. So I heard you say something that kind of struck a bell with me, and it was that until we can rid the community of racism. All right. So I just want to ask you this: we're talking about end states at this point, and you're a military man. I'm a military man, so we understand what an end state is, right? We understand 5-paragraph op orders, and you don't go into a mission or into any type of real type of war unless you have an exit strategy. If you know what the end state is, you don't declare something a war, i.e., the war on drugs is not a real war because what is the end state? What are they really looking for? Are they looking to eradicate all drugs from the earth? Well, that's impossible, right? So
they were looking to lock up Black people.
So then what is the war when we start talking about, what's your end state? And so you think about an end state for Black.
You have all the Black people locked up, let all the drugs run free, which is why we have prescription opioids running in the streets now when you got 1 in 3 Black men locked up in prison.
All right, well, let me bring it back. What is your end state for Black America? At what point are we over slavery? And I'm not talking about the emotional portion at this point. Now I'm talking about at what point are we actually, at what point have we arrived?
When the laws that still exist to enslave us have been broken and no longer affect our ability to build happy and positive communities.
Okay. And Dave, for you, at what point have we arrived?
Yeah, I think once there's true equality within our justice system, within our legal system, I think that's when we'll have arrived. I know President Obama passed the act back in 2010 to kind of close the ratio when it comes to prison time for crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. It went from a 100-to-1 ratio to 18-to-1 ratio, but there's still work we need to do with that. And it's just kind of one example of a particular policy that's predicated on incarcerating African Americans, the Black community, in an equal way when you think about the policy for, because we know that powder cocaine is used mostly within the white community. So until we get the policies that equal to equality, no matter what ethnic background you're from, I think we won't really be able to kind of not reference slavery or not reference Black codes or the Jim Crow era. So I think we need equality from a legal standpoint.
Okay, so you guys are talking about equality from our justice system. All right, and maybe that might be a piece of it. I'm talking about my thoughts and my feelings, but I feel like maybe that's a small piece of it. But I feel for the most part, the justice system is probably the best justice system in the world as far as fairness, because in most justice systems in other places, you still have a very large percentage of people who are punished outside of the court. So this is one of the only justice systems in the world, not the only, but one of the only justice systems in the world. It is a European style justice system where we can talk about what's the word I'm looking for? Innocent until proven guilty, right? I'm not saying it's the best in the world, but it's one of the best in the world. Right now, you have a lot of people that are locked up, but still, you have a fair system, or a system that where a person can come in and not be immediately put in a position where he or she is going to be punished versus, you know, they're coming in with pretty much a clean slate. You know what I'm saying? So I see a lot of people making faces, and I'll just go ahead and let you respond.
Okay, I'm just
You want to
confused.
go first, Antoinette?
Oh, okay. If you have something to say, please go ahead, Doc.
You could go first if you want, but yeah, I have something to say to that.
I was just blown away by the bit about we have the most fair legal system in the world. If anything, I could say we have the most clearly divided legal system in the world, and being punished outside of the court. Are you including police shootings in this? Are you including police harassment in this? Are you including, like, what are you justifying as being punished outside of the court? Because in Chicago, we've had everything from the police ignoring crimes because we're asking for body cams. We've had things like we've had we've had tons of shootings, and it's getting to the point where people are saying, I don't think all these are, you know, really inner neighborhood shootings. We're having a wide array of crime outside the justice system. And then the justice system also, anybody who's seen the 13th, that documentary on Netflix, knows that there are laws that were created at a table of white men who said, how do we lock up more black people? So, okay, yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I would say that our prison system is far from being the best. First of all, we make up 25% of the world's prisoners. 25%. We have right now 2.2 million people in prison, another 4.2 to 4.3 million on parole or probation. So upwards to 7 million people who's under the observation of our system. That's one thing.
And to go along with your statistic, we're only 5% of the U.S. of the world population, the United States, but we got 25% of the prisoners. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, you're totally right. And then also, because of this capitalistic system we live under, we use our prison system to make money. I mean, you have private prisons that get paid by our government to house people, to house prisoners. So it's also a business. And then when it comes to the black community, essentially our government, and we can go back to the Nixon era back in the 1970s, and one of Nixon's advisors came out and stated that, hey, Nixon decided to have a war on drugs as a way to disrupt the communities of black individuals and also of the anti-war leftists. He figured that he could vilify them in the media by saying these hippies or anti-war leftists abuse marijuana and blacks abuse heroin, and he could systematically destroy the communities. And that was his own advisor, John Ehrlichman, or I forgot the enunciation of his last name, but his own advisor came out and said that. So the war on drugs was a way to increase the incarceration rates within the black community. So that is deeply disturbing and troubling. And if you have a prison system like that, I would say it's far from being one of the best in the world. And here's another issue. Our prison systems don't provide true rehabilitation to our prisoners. When I think about Switzerland and their prison system, they actually provide true rehabilitation. They have
so you beat me to my punch. So you beat me to the punch. Yeah, because I'll let you go ahead and finish your point, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they have lower drug abuse rates. Their prisoners have much higher success rates once they're released from jail or from prison. And I think that we need to change the way that our prison systems are ran. We need to rehabilitate these individuals so that they can be productive individuals within our society. It's a shame that someone comes out of prison and it's difficult for them to get a job. They lose their right to vote. In some states, they can't drive. They can't, so how are they supposed to thrive once they get out of prison? That's a horrible prison system to me.
Oh, so let me ask you this, because this is what I wanted to say earlier, and you heard me stuttering a little bit. You heard me dancing around my words because I wanted to be careful of how I couch this, but we're all black people here. So what I meant to say is, think of black people in America as our own nation. All right. Now compare our justice system with other black nations. I don't want to compare us to Switzerland. I'm saying we're in a position right now we might be a little bit better than if we were in Jamaica, because there's police brutality in Jamaica. You also made the point to recidivism, whatever. Getting back once you get done with prison, not having to go back to prison.
What you put in your mouth?
And yeah, that's horrible. But I don't know if we can blame that on a system that really wasn't considering us in the first place, right? So you talk about Switzerland. Switzerland is a much more homogenous society. So you have white people taking care of white people. And I don't want to come off as being racist or anything else. The same thing in Korea or whatever else. If you're dealing with just, if we had a black country and dealing with black people in a more caring way, and we're making sure that our brothers and sisters are actually getting better, right? That they're not going into prison and just being kept in the hole or mistreated. The same thing, you could say the same thing for teaching or whatever else, right? You could say, well, black teachers would be more caring to black students that they teach them. But you don't have that many black school systems. You don't have that many black teachers with the skill set needed to really give those children the education that they want. I.e., you go to certain places and outside of this sphere, outside of our African-American world, right? And the big issue is getting qualified teachers. It's just having qualified teachers, because the persons that are doing the teaching don't have the proper education themselves, right? When I think about, it's a big conversation. When I think about, I saw the face that everybody made, like when I made that statement that the American justice system is one of the best in the world, right? Now, I will stand behind that. But when I saw the face, it's like a lot of people will look at me when I say that and they'll say, oh, this brother really lost his way. He doesn't have our best interests in heart. And I think when we talk about end state, and that's the reason I started off by asking you guys about end states, because I want to know what you guys really see as being a success. And I would say my end state, what I want for Black America is actually probably a lot more than what you guys want for Black America. What I want for Black people in the world is probably a lot more than what you guys want. I don't want people to think I have a bad heart. I want people to think that I may have a different way of getting there, a different way where I think we need to get there. Not that I have a separate end state. We all want the same end state. But the thing is, you have to really define what is it that we're going after and how we're going to do it. If you don't have an action plan, right? And you see a lot of people who are emotionally bound. They're bound by the subject of slavery. They're bound by the subject of Jim Crow. Some people for the right reasons, some people for the wrong reasons. The right reason will be you had to drink out of a water fountain that said colored only. I understand if you're emotionally bound by that, right? I understand how that may scar you. But if it was your grandmother that had to go through that, it shouldn't be as emotionally binding to you. And if we're going ahead, if we want to pass that down from generation into generation and say, okay, this is the same pain that you're supposed to have, the pain that I had over this, you're supposed to have this too, son, or this too, daughter, we're going to have an issue, because people cannot fight. People cannot fight with pain in their heart. It's almost like if you send a boxer into a ring and he's fighting emotionally, he's going to end up losing that fight because he's going to beat himself emotionally. So I think that, and I'll pass the mic after this, but I just think the best way to go about this is just like a 5-paragraph op order, right? The execution paragraph. The execution paragraph is phased. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This is my end state. This is where I stop. This is where we've arrived. But if we're waiting to say we've arrived because, we're still upset over this, we're supposed to remain upset over this year after year after year, then you'll never get over it. Because I can always renew it. And the thing is, from generation to generation, it becomes more and more anecdotal because we get further and further away from the actual incident. And now we have to pretty much, we come up with these mythologies. So some of it's true and some of it's not. And you have to realize that you're talking about something that's 400 or 500 years old. You have portions of that that are going to go down generation to generation that'll be true. You have another portion of it that's not going to be true. It's going to be something that's anecdotal or made up. And then you bring that in also. Go ahead, Antoinette.
Okay. I wanted to make a point. A few steps back, you were saying that it was something that happened to our grandparents, and the stories we shouldn't take them so personally because it wasn't something that happened to us. And then you have to realize that, you know, a lot of people, something happening to your grandparents is personal. Just like, and what our grandparents taught us, those anecdotes that our grandparents gave us from what happened to them, there were similar anecdotes on the other side about how much they hated us and how low they were able to treat us, and how, you know, that's our true station, and that information is being passed on the other side. So it's not like the racism all went away. We legally fought to stop them from having those indignifying signs over the water fountains, dehumanizing signs over the water fountains. But the racism behind those signs didn't go away because we got the law changed. So to say get over it, you know, you changed the law, okay, but there's still people flying the flag of the Confederacy, of the losing side of a battle over the United States, and they're flying their flag freely. And we're mad at Mexican Americans for flying a Mexican flag when they're talking about their rights. You know, it's like, if flags mean that much, then that flag should be banned. Any leader from that side of the war should be banned of having any statue, barred from having any statues in remembrance of them. And they should be screwed into the pits of hell by every person in the United States. That's how I feel about it. Now, since that hasn't happened, and since they're still waving that banner, I have some personal emotional skin in the game. Yeah. You know, I didn't have to drink from a blacks only water fountain, but those same people won't drink from a water glass that they've seen me drink from. You know, still exists. That was a kind of sharp point that and that this tone is not at you. It is not at you. It is just at the idea of people who feel like there's, like, slavery was the end of it. The changing of the law that said you can't put me in chains and call me yours for no reason and and turn me into cargo. They're now putting all of our men in jail, 1 in 3. You know, there's somebody who's not on this call. You're an officer in the military. David is a doctor. There's somebody who's not on this call. We have other cousins. I'm not going to call anybody out of this because that would be disrespectful. We have other cousins not on this call. So, and like I said, 1 in 3, that's saying something. That 5%, yet 25% of us locked up, and then 1 in 3 of those 25% is African Americans, and that racism having been so just prevalent 150 years ago. I wish people could feel how close 150 years ago is. I've lived 30 years already, so 5 times of my life, 5 times the lifespan I've lived, and the lifespan I've lived, it's only been that long. So get over slavery. That's why I say I can't, with the laws still being what they are, with all these people around me having had this huge head start. And what you say about unifying African Americans and Africans, the diaspora of Africans as we've been spread across this country or the world, I super agree with you on that. We do have chains to reconnect and bonds to retie. But for us, I'm starting to see more and more clearly that we're part of a talented 10th that needs to be the starter of that. We need to be the ones to ignite that, because a lot of us are bogged down in countries that don't have the systems set up that we have set up in America. If we were able to take our systems that we have here and put them in places like Haiti and other places that need the help, we might be able to build up Black empires.
Is our system that good? And where did our system come from?
Our system isn't perfect, and who cares where it came from, because there's still some work to be done on it. But if we actually were working to perfect the system that we had, instead of just being bogged down in it by people like Donald Trump and all of the news, fake or not, like if we instead of being caught up in the show of it all, we were saying, hey, these are problems. We need to actually get rid of this electoral college because they screwed us over. We need to get rid of anybody that's allowing Trump to stay, and any member of Congress who's supporting any of these changes that Trump is making. We need to change the way we vote to make sure that it's safer and everything like that. Anybody who's not making those changes, if we haven't bounced them out, then America is kind of stale right now. We're not we're not actually speaking up for our inner voice and who we are as a nation. But that doesn't have to be every nation inside of America. And African Americans, as our own nation, we could stand up and we could reach out to the rest of the world and say, hey, these are the problems that we've experienced here. But if we fixed it and put it over there, your people might be doing better.
So I'm going to take that and expound on it just a little bit. Okay. I think if you try to go anywhere and you try to set up or change other people, you're going to run into this huge problem. We have enough trouble just changing ourselves. Then we can go someplace and set up a community. So it's almost like, and let me do this in order. First, I want to go back. You said that we can't take it personal. I didn't say you can't take it personal. Take it personal. I said we shouldn't be so emotional. I said when we get emotional over this stuff, it holds us back because then we don't think as clear as we need to, and we don't do the things we need to. It's going to be certain things we won't do because it upsets us. Certain things we won't read because it upsets us. Certain truths we won't absorb because it upsets us. The other point I was going to make, if we do go into, let's say you go to Ghana, there's no way you're going to change the Ghanaians to do things the way that we do things. And what you may find is you might go there and figure out they do a lot of things better than us. But just like you have a Chinatown in America, you can have a Black American town in Ghana, and they have a very large Black American community in Ghana. And if it does well, if that Black American community, if you look at that like it's just its own little test, petri dish. If things work well there, guess what happens? People move there, they get jobs there. They want to do things like us then. So it's like we have to be an example. And the only way we're going to be an example is you have to make progress. And we are making progress. So we talk about how many Black men are in prison, and I'm telling you, there's more Black men in college than there is in prison right now, and that's a good thing. To know that you have more Black men right now in college than you have in prison, that's a step up, right? But in other areas, we are failing, right? So you start talking about Black marriages. You had more Black marriages in the 1950s and the 1960s than you had in the 1970s. And then from there, the Black marriage chart plummets. We get worse and worse year after year, right? So you have to look at, to me, when I start talking about the phase approaches, I think we have to look at some of those things that really can be measured, right? So like empirical data that we can measure, i.e. how many people are in college, how many married families do we have, our percentage of wealth that we have relative to other Americans. And those are all markers of progress and excellence, and they're all very personal, right? So like you said, some people are more talented than others. I don't know if it's a 10th, if it's a third, but there's definitely going to be some Black people that are performing and doing well. You're going to have others that are kind of lingering behind. And it's all for different reasons. But there is a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, so, first of all, I think we can appreciate our emotions when it comes to everything that's happened to our ancestors, but still engender change and produce the type of change that we want. And I think our emotions are definitely valid, especially considering that we continue to go through systemic oppression and racism. And I think we have a right to still be upset about our past because our past is still currently happening. When you think about the wealth disparity amongst Blacks and whites, when you think about the low access to adequate health care amongst Blacks compared to whites, when you think about the higher unemployment rates, when you think about the lower graduation rates, when you think about the higher incarceration rates, why is it that 40% of the Black population is in prison and we only make up 30% of our whole country's population, but there's only 39% of the white population, they make up over 60%. So these things are not just due to the fact that we're inherently nefarious or there's like something inherently or intrinsically wrong with us. There is systemic oppression and racism that exists. Now, with that said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend as if we don't have some socially inappropriate behaviors. Like, We do, and we do need to work on that. I admit to that. I'm not going to say that we're heavily divided and we need to unify. And I mean, I'm not going to say that we're not heavily divided and that we need to unify, because we do need to unify as a people. So there's things that we have to do. We have to take personal responsibility on in order for us to create the type of change that we're looking for. But until this system that we're under changes, it's hard for us to disassociate from our past and what's happened to us as a people. And I think that's the issue there. So yeah.
I see over there boiling.
No, I'm over here agreeing. I'm agreeing 100%. I'm saying I agree. It's what's happening. It's not what's happened. It's what's happening. And so asking us to get over it, it's like asking somebody to, get over a scabbed knee or get over a skinned knee, stop limping on a skinned knee when clearly it's still injured. I say this often that you can't, like, getting over things, you can't just decide that this ailment, I've diagnosed that this ailment is something that you should get over and that this one isn't. When you look at society, you look at all the different problems, first off, almost all of them affect African Americans to a higher extent and to a greater extent than white folks. And it's because we don't have a certain level of financial padding between us and life's events. So when something goes down, if food often has to suffer, our food choices have to suffer. Becoming a person who gets to eat organic vegetables, I had to actually start making the decision to grow them myself because the prices were for people who were doctors and lawyers, and I wasn't at that level in my life. So, and I had a child who I was going to feed. So it was either make the decision to feed him less expensive food that could have an impact on his behavior and his ability to learn in school, or it was go and grow it myself. Now, most people don't have the support from their family, don't have the whereabouts to get the help. If they've never been involved in farm financing, they don't have the ability to just go out and do that. But I'm starting to realize more and more that the upbringing that we were gifted from our parents, and the family that we had clearly was blessed. And we grew up as part of the Talented 10th, whether we knew it or not. And I look at the success that you, my brother, you, my cousin, you have in your life. And I look at the fact that I feel like I have a certain amount of freedom coming to me as the farm expands and becomes more profitable and starts to really be my main source of support, that it's like there is the freedom there to create that reach back. And like I said, Talented 10th means we are supposed to do that reaching back. Excuse me 1 second, I'm going to work on this background noise.
I mean, and think about this too, because we kept going back to the Talented 10th, and I think that may be offensive to some people. I don't think it's anybody saying, hey, we're better than you, but there's a difference, right? Now, if we're talking about poverty, right? I'm not in poverty, David. You're not in poverty. Whose responsibility is it to fix? Now, and I'm asking this because it's two parts. I think it's like almost like a Venn diagram here. We have one sphere, we're talking about poverty. We have one sphere where we're talking about Black people. Now we have Black people who are impoverished. That's where the spheres cross. Whose responsibility is it to fix Black impoverished people? Because this is why I'm saying this. A lot of times you'll have brothers like you, brothers like myself, that'll go to the hood to put in work or to motivate other brothers. And what you might get is a little bit of pushback because you don't have the same experiences that they have. So impoverished people a lot of times have more in common with other impoverished people, and they'd rather accept advice from other impoverished people. But if you get a billionaire, be it Michael Jordan, which people have found a way to hate him, or Kanye West, where people have found a way to hate him and they're giving advice. They don't want to get their advice from them because they are so-called different. Well, guess what, David? You're different too. Whether you are sympathetic to, black, the black struggle or not, you're still looked at as being, you're a doctor, right? Yeah, you from Harvard, but you're a doctor, Antoinette. You grew up in Matson. So what makes you the expert? Why should anybody follow you? And the only thing you really can, if you said anything that was different than what you were saying, I would say that a good portion of the black community would attack you. If you don't toe a certain line, if you don't toe a certain line of monolithic thought, if you don't say the stats that you guys are saying, if you're not more creative with, and I'm not saying you're not creative, but if you let's say you're somebody who just thinks outside the box and you say something like 400 years of slavery was a choice, not actually saying slavery was a choice, but saying that we were mentally enslaved. All right. So let's take somebody like Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman would come and get you and she would tell you that slavery was a choice. Right. So she was thinking different, but she was thinking like an African, because Harriet Tubman still understood her African connection. Right. So I say that to say that two things. One, yeah, you do have some black people that are already doing okay. I'd say you have a very large black middle class. You have a very large black middle class. We could probably pull the numbers up, but it's big. It may not be as big as a white middle class, okay? But it's big enough. It's substantial. And then you have a black underclass. If you're focusing on actually taking that black underclass and taking a certain percentage of them and rising them up to the middle class and saying, okay, well, this is a marker for success for the black community, then how do you, as a person in the middle class from your station, not saying they have to change their behavior, but how do you contribute to that?
Yeah. So just a couple of things. First, when you look up the statistics, blacks on average for their annual salary make over just above the poverty line. And I would say that most blacks are at the poverty line or below it. So yeah, we may make up a big part of the middle class, but it's the low middle class.
No, and then that's blacks on average.
There's the impoverished. So then also, I think that individuals like us, we can connect with our people as long as they understand and they believe that we have their best interests at hand. And it's our job to make sure that they understand that and perceives that from us. And then you have brought up poverty and black people, and whose responsibility is it to rise up from that, from the impecunious state? I think that it's definitely our responsibility, take it upon ourselves to generate wealth within our community. But I also think that our government has a responsibility as well, just given the fact that they've economically castrated us over the years. We've provided them with free labor through slavery, and they've benefited so much from a pecuniary standpoint. And we did not reap any of the benefits of that hard labor. I do think that, but like I said in one of our previous videos, do I think we'll ever receive reparations? No. But at least all I'm looking for is for there to be the opportunities available for individuals like us, right? And what does that mean? What type of opportunities am I looking for? Well, for example, our school systems. I think we should have better schools. We should have more funding to our schools. Right now, the funding for schools is based on property tax. If the average annual salary for Black individuals is just slightly above the poverty line, well, then, of course, we're going to live in poor communities. That means that there's less money that's going into our school systems, and that puts us at a disadvantage. So maybe we should have equal when it comes to public school, not private school, but when it comes to public school, maybe we need to find a way to ensure that appropriate funding is being provided to the communities that need it the most, right? Because as a country, we're only as good as our weakest individuals. So if you have a community that's not excelling from an economic standpoint or from various standpoints, you want to do all you can to bring them up, because that will better our country overall. So our school systems, I want more opportunities with that when it comes to entrepreneurship and starting our own businesses and loan opportunities and things of that nature. I feel like we need more opportunities in that particular aspect. And I could name a few other things. So yes, we have a personal responsibility to kind of elevate ourselves from, the dire situation that we're in right now. But I think there's also partial responsibility on our government to give us the assistance that we need as well.
Let me respond real quick, because two things. So you were talking about the on average, we're just slightly above the poverty line. Okay, but that doesn't really tell much of the story. If you say, okay, there's 40 million African Americans, give or take, in America. If 10 million of those are above the poverty line or middle class, that's still a substantial amount. Now, if you have 20 million who are below the poverty line, that's going to skew the number to be, lower. But that doesn't mean that you don't have 10 million African Americans. What I'm trying to say is we cannot discount
what those numbers for.
20 million is 50%. That's a huge percentage of
no.
people.
We're talking about 50%. So what I said, I didn't say that there weren't 20 million African Americans, and we don't know the numbers. We got to pull the poverty number. We could do it right now. Let's pull the numbers up and say, okay, how many are in, and get the real numbers, because saying, okay, this is the average salary for African Americans isn't saying much if you still have 10 million African Americans that are, middle class, because those 10 million African Americans, guess what they deal with? They deal with other middle class individuals. Let's be real, right? So you're not going out and kicking it with people who are impoverished every day. You see what I'm saying? Like, the people in the hood are dealing with people in the hood, and those economies are dealing with each other. And then we have these African Americans up here who pretty much are in the middle class, and then you have a very small Black super rich or rich class, right? But
you have to remember.
So what I'm saying is, we're more likely to talk to people in our sphere of, or in or around how much money we make, right? I deal with other people. You go to work with people. You go to work with other doctors. I go to work with other military officers, and that's what we deal with. And then, so that's just the point.
Majority of them are not Black.
That's fine, but
also the greater percentage of the Black community stays within huge urban centers, and they tend to stay in the hood. Coach and I actually looked up the statistics on this before, because we had a discussion about it. Because she made the argument that no, majority of Black people don't live in the city, and majority of them are not in these huge urban centers or in the hood. But when we looked up the statistics, and I think it was from like one of the U.S. bureaus or whatever, and it clearly showed that, we are mostly concentrated in these huge urban centers, and we are in more poor communities as a whole. So you and I and Antoinette, we do represent a select few.
So not select few. So we talk about, let's say we said 10 million, you said select few, but I'm saying don't minimize it, because that's not a good thing, because then we're not really capturing how much progress we made. When I'm saying
no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not minimizing them at all. I think what we're doing
with millions and millions of Black people who go to work every day, make a lot of money, and are doing perfectly fine. Millions and millions.
I hope that's not the sentiment that I'm giving off, because not at all, because I'm a part of those millions. Not at all am I trying to diminish the success of our community and what we've done. I think we're doing great, but there's still a long road that we have to travel. And also, when I look at our community, I don't look at smaller. I look at like where the most of us lie, and the fact of the matter is, the most of us lie in the lower middle class and in the poverty group with from an economic standpoint. So when I look at that, that's what's deeply concerning to me, and I start to wonder, what can I do? What can we do as a community to turn things around?
Okay,
exactly. So I don't think it diminishes at all the 10 million or however many millions of blacks that actually have accomplished success, to say that, hey, that percentage still isn't great enough. And percentage wise, we need to have a greater percentage of us reaching those success rates.
I'm looking at it right now as we speak.
Okay. I seem to recall like the average income for white families in 2014 was somewhere in like $150,000, and then for black families it was like $7,000, and then for Latinos, or for black families it was $6,000, and for Latinos it was $7,000. So
38% of black Americans are middle class.
28. So that's less than 50% of us.
It's less than 50%, but what is 38% or 40? Let's just round it up to 40.
What's the lower class?
What's 40% of 40 million? 50% of 40 million would be 20 million, so it's going to be a little bit less than that. Let's say it's
basically the numbers that you said, right? Almost.
That's 16 million almost.
But are you satisfied with 38% or 30 whatever?
Let me finish my point. See,
16 million to how many million? I mean, that's
16 million is huge. 16 million is bigger than a lot of African countries. What I'm saying is you have plenty of
African Americans. We can't compare ourselves to African countries.
You have plenty of African Americans. Listen, it's not an argument. All I'm saying is you have plenty of African Americans who have, quote unquote, arrived. Now, if they've arrived and if they're holding wealth, if they're generating jobs for their brothers and sisters in the lower class, probably not. But let me get to my point.
Absolutely
that's not the point. First thing I'm saying is don't minimize that middle class. The second thing I'm saying is there's definitely a break in between those that are, in poverty, in the hood, that culture, and the culture of the middle class. There's two different breaks. Certain people are getting up every day, they're going to work, they're doing the right things, and that's part of their success is what they've actually done. I'm not saying that what I've done, I haven't received any help. I receive help every day. But there's a certain mindset I have, and it's, okay, how many people are willing to submit to somebody treating you the wrong way, but then you go ahead and you acquiesce, you do whatever you have to do because you want to progress in your career, right? So we have family members. So for instance, we're both in the military. How many people have you punched in the face, David, because they made you upset?
I haven't punched any.
Don't admit to any of it.
And guess what? Plenty of people in the military made me upset. But we have a family member who's not in the best socioeconomic position right now. And he was in the military too. And he did punch somebody in the face. He punched a white man in the face who was talking whatever to him he didn't like. He punched him in the face, right? So what I'm saying, some of us are willing to submit to being human.
I don't think we're submitting by not punching those individuals in the face. I think we're using discipline and we're taking the smart approach. Yes, because
that's my second point. My second point is discipline, right?
Doesn't
you
mean
get up every morning.
Their actions, and we still I've taken certain steps in order for that individual to be reprimanded for their actions, and there are systems in place to help us with that. So. But I don't think that 38% is a number we can tout around and be proud of. I promise you, I'm not trying to diminish that 38%.
I want to know how the rest of us are divided up.
You don't have to be proud of it.
And I think that's good progress, but we have a lot of work to do, and it doesn't represent the majority of us. The majority of us are not in the middle class, and that is deeply concerning to me. So my question is, what do we do to change those numbers?
Get this too. 38.4% are middle class. 28.8% are working class, right above poverty. So let's add 38, which is 4. Let's call that 40. That's 70%. 40 plus 30 is 70 minus 4. Okay, that's 66%. What's 66%? Now, I can't do that in my head that quickly, but 66% of 40 million. So now when we talk about the poverty rate, we're talking about 23.5%. Those 23.5% living below the poverty line. All right. Now, how that skews the money where our average salary, whatever else, is right above the poverty line. However, because the black middle class is different than the white middle class, and we don't hold as much wealth. We tend to make it and then spend it and not save it, not invest it, not put it back into the community, not build businesses to employ other people, depending on, other races pretty much to give us jobs, right? But
Yeah.
getting back to what we were talking about, which was discipline, and you can't say that discipline doesn't matter. You can't say that your life choices don't matter. Yeah, we all make bad life choices where it's going to put us in, like there's mistakes I've made I say this all the time. I made in my 20s that I'm paying for in my 30s and my 40s, right? But I'm coming up out of that. Other people make bigger mistakes. It leaves them further behind. How come they made those mistakes? A lot of them didn't have what I was given, which was a 2-parent household, right? But how can we blame white people for broken families? How do you blame white people for broken families? Not now. A lot of people say, well, slavery.
You can't. 1 in 3 black men being in jail.
Okay, hold up. When did all this start?
How do you think I'm single? I'm beautiful, and I got a good attitude and personality. 1 in 3 black men in jail.
I can tell by your phone.
Because back in 1974, there was only a little over 218,000 individuals incarcerated, and that's black, white, Hispanic all together. There was a 500 to 600% growth in the incarceration rate from 1974 to late 1990s, and into the 2000s, and right now there are 2.2 million individuals incarcerated, and as I stated earlier, 40% of them are black, right? So that does affect the black family structure. Now, I'm not saying that I think it's multifactorial. I don't think that that's the only issue, but that is a big issue that we have. When you take black males out of the household, we see the implications of that.
Bro, okay, so this is the stat we need to fix that though. The stat that we can do to kind of, I don't want to combat what you're saying, but then the real stat would be how many broken black families are because of black men in prison versus how many black families are broken because black men didn't marry the woman they had a baby with. Now, yeah, you have to do that math because you can't say, okay, you know what?
Would it have better choices of who to make a baby with if everybody wasn't in jail, boo?
Yeah,
sorry. Might have been more black doctors.
Not everybody is in jail. Not everybody who has a baby is in jail. A lot, I would say the majority of black men, because you're talking about what, 2 million or something like that, 1 million. I don't know how many black. It's 2 million in prison. I think half of them are black, something like that. Let's say 1 million black men are in jail. Well, there's a whole hell of a lot more than 500,000 or 2 million broken black families.
I agree with you 100%.
Where did the rest of those broken black families come from?
I agree with you 100%. That's why I stated it's multifactorial. I don't think that that's the only factor that plays into the broken household. I mean, welfare plays a role as well, right? So when welfare was rolled out, you had black women who were intentionally breaking up their family so that they can reap the benefits of it, right? And it was a mistake made on our behalf. But
you had to do that as a show for the white folks. Your man stayed in somebody else's house while that white lady came down. They weren't really breaking up their families.
Yeah, but I think that did probably created some division, so to speak. And then also, and I think that our government could have been a little bit more careful with the nuances of the welfare program to ensure that that's not happening. Some may conspire that, hey, maybe that was intentional. By doing that, they knew that for individuals who fall in the lower economic bracket, that they would be that would promote the fracturing of families. But that's another thing that plays a role. And then, Twan, I do think that there's a certain level of personal responsibility on our behalf, right? Like, we need to take it upon ourselves to rebuild the black family. We should have took it upon ourselves to ensure that the black family stay together, that we continue to pass on those certain morals and values that we once had within the family structure. I agree with you 100%. So I think there's a lot of factors that come into play, and there is a certain level of personal responsibility. But let's not act and pretend as if this country didn't have something to do with it. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying, like, there's a lot of blame to go around here. But at the end of the day, again, my question is, what do we do from this point to move forward to get the kind of progress that we need? And I believe that it's going to take a fight on both fronts. One, fighting to create changes within our system that would result in the engendering of equality. And then two, I think we need to take it upon ourselves to change intrinsically in order to get the results that we're looking for. But both fronts are, the fight on both fronts are equally important. And I don't think that we should negate or consider the fight against systemic oppression as nugatory, or and just completely like we need to fight for systematic change, and we need to get rid of systemic oppression. But I agree that we should not allow that systemic oppression to prevent us from doing what we need to do to excel as a people.
Yes, I would love to piggyback off of that really quick, because I agree with you, Dave. And my question would be, and my thing would be to pose the question right back at you, Antoine. If you consider the fact that once slavery ended in 1864, 1865, depending on what portion of the country you're in, once it ended, and these white politicians who had up until that point had supported it and supported the movement of it, and with that just had President Abraham Lincoln assassinated. Okay, so he's not going to be any more of a supporter. He's not going to do any more freeing of the slaves, any more backing us up. And now you got all these racist white people and a whole racist government with a black people problem, and they don't know what they want to do with us. So when did we expect that they were going to give us the chance to truly be equal? When did we expect that they were going to stop viewing us as a problem? Because they were lynching us right away, breaking up our homes and communities. If they saw we had a Black Wall Street, they burned that down. Anytime they saw us building ourselves up, we were knocked down again. So is it even wise? When does it become wise to forget slavery and forget the root of their evil systems?
Yeah, so I never said forget anything. I said we shouldn't be so emotional over it, and we have to kind of separate ourselves from the emotion, or at least put that emotion in the box and, let it come out. When you're watching 12 Years a Slave and you want to go ahead and shed a tear, go ahead and shed a tear.
What do you mean by too emotional? Can you give me an example?
No, but let me finish this. Now I'll try to come back and I don't think there's any arguing that Black people are overly emotional when it comes to slavery, right? Because if we weren't overly emotional, then let me think. The best.
Would you then also say that Jews are overly emotional about the Holocaust?
I would even say, yeah, maybe they are to some extent, Antoinette, but they're also out there working on. They also have a very large portion of control of our banks. They have a very large control and portion of the media, so they'll be okay, right? They could be emotional as they want to be at this point because they've made some strides in other areas. I'm saying the emotional,
and they haven't had to face as much oppression either.
Right now, see, that's
nobody would say they were
you start measuring oppression, right? Because you could say, oh, well, slavery was the worst thing that ever happened to anybody in the whole world, and you'd be wrong. You would be wrong, man. Like, people are going through things right now today that is worse than any type of slavery that we had here in America. One, you have to realize that slavery in America was probably the best slavery as far as the transatlantic slavery goes, because all the other islands in Brazil and South America, they were dying by the millions. They resupplied them straight from Africa. They had more blacks being sold or reproduced here in America than they had in any other station on this side of the Atlantic, which is why we have large population.
Are we measuring like what slavery was worth?
No, but what you did not have as much oppression as us.
Our cousins.
Is if they
had your cousins were gunned down regularly.
If we have 6 million people, I don't know what the numbers are, but if it was 6 million people died in the space of just a few years, I would say they would have more right to be upset at this point. So when you start talking about oppression, I just say you can't measure oppression because you can't.
Over 80 million of us died.
Okay, well, that's a new number, and those numbers are really. I know tens of millions of people died in the transatlantic slave trade. When you start talking about the African Americans, we're talking about African Americans, the number is going to be a little bit different. I don't know if it'll be as large. You got to figure only like 13 million people came over on boats, right? So I know I'm not discounting and saying what's big or small, whatever else. I'm saying let's not measure oppression. Let's not say, well, we have the worst oppression in the world. Like there's all types of conquests that happen throughout history, man. And they happen in Europe. They happen in Asia. They happen in Africa. You had different people perpetrating those conquests. And when you just focus on, we're so focused on slavery, and we make it seem like it's just the biggest impediment to our progress that anybody in the world has ever had to deal with. And I'm saying, well, maybe we're wrong about that. I'm not saying slavery's not bad. I'm not saying you should forget about it. I'm saying maybe we should disconnect ourselves emotionally from it just a little bit. Don't forget. As a matter of fact, I would say, I wouldn't even go as far as saying that American history is Black history, and Black history is American history, and should all be taught together. We should be on the page in the history book. I get that. But then you have to be able to look at that history and realize that it's history, and realize that the further that gets away, the less it's going to matter, and the less you're going to be able to use that as an excuse or an impediment to your success. And we have to be able to say, okay, these qualities is what we need to promote as something that's going to make us improve as a people. There's certain qualities that you have and certain skill sets that you have, and there's certain things that you do every day. And when you get up early and you go to work, or you work your farm, or you go to work at, wherever else.
Thank you so much for calling my name, because
everything you have to do every day in order to be successful. And a lot of it is discipline. A lot of it is submitting. Right? Those are the things that are actually going to pull us up out of poverty, each by each, one by one. Not the whole world, not the whole, everybody. In capitalism, the way it works is not a perfect system, but it's the best.
I think those two things are in two different pools. You're talking about the personal feelings that we have about slavery and how they affect our current systems and things like that. And then you're talking about like our personal success and our personal individual ability to affect that now. I think that right now there's more of us with the ability to have an effect on our personal behaviors and things like that. Yes, but slavery and the emotional effects of it, that's in a completely different pocket for me. I would like to see those things addressed for a better America. But as far as how slavery affects my personal and individual ability to achieve, I think that everybody does. You know, if somebody comes up to you and asks you why you haven't succeeded thus far in your life, and your answer has anything to do with slavery, then you are brainwashed, and there is a problem. I'll agree with you on that. But I think it's something completely separate.
And I don't think a bunch of us are running around saying it's because of slavery. That's why I'm in the situation that we're in. And another statement I wanted to make was, I don't think we need to search for moral equivalency when it comes to our experience and our ancestors' experience here in America. It was nefarious, it was iniquitous, it was bad, and it is what it is. Like, I think we should just leave it at that. I don't think we need to compare like which situation was more dire or which situation was worse, and so on and so forth.
You're talking about oppressions from other places in the world or whatever?
Yeah, because I think just all of it is bad to me, and it's unwarranted. The other thing is, you already stated, I don't think we're hung up on slavery. The issue is we're still facing oppressive tactics. And I think that's the reason why we're still, we still may reference slavery or reference Black codes or reference, the Jim Crow era, because we see the passage of certain aspects of those oppressive systems that's still present in today's time. Now, I agree with you 100%. We can't get hung up on, like I said, I think it's a two-front battle. We need to fight against that systemic racism or systematic racism, but we can't get hung up on that. And I agree with you 100%. We do need to work on ourselves and see how we can lift ourselves out of, the current situation that we're in. But that was just kind of my response to some of the stuff you were saying. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. So we agree on a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we all have more in common than we have apart, and that's I think again, like just asking, don't ask, a brother like what's his politics, or don't ask a sister, how do you feel about what's going on in the news right now? Because that's when you get the, slavery was a choice answer, and everybody gets upset because this guy's thinking esoterical, he's thinking, second or third, he's thinking higher, right? Um, Ask him, man, what do you see? What do you see? What's your desire for the Black community in the next 20 years? Where do you want to see us at? And see what he says, or see what she says, because what you'll find is most of us look for the same thing, right? We want to be more successful. We want to see more people, a larger percentage. I want to see that 38% number. I want to see that maybe 40 or 50% of the Black community. Now, will it ever be 100% of Black people in the middle class? Probably not, because it's not 100% of white people in the middle class. It's not 100% of Mexicans in the middle class. It's not 100% of Asians in the middle class. But we can also say they have a different culture. They have different attitudes towards certain things. And you may have something in common with that Asian guy, Antoinette, or something in common with that Mexican guy, David, when it comes to your work ethic, when it comes to the way you're disciplined. So how do we transfer that discipline? Anybody can say, if you work like this Asian man over here.
You were Asian because I'm a farmer and you're a doctor.
No, what I'm saying, if you work like this Asian man over here, and he's Asian and you're Black, got it. You're in the ghetto. But if you did exactly what he did, you would get a lot of the same successes that he gets. He's Asian, he's not white.
It's so much that goes. I hear what you're saying, though. I promise you, I hear what you're saying. And hard work is important, and we do need to work hard. But I cannot deny the fact that the current socio-political situation or circumstance that we have on our hands prevents a certain number of us from progressing, no matter how hard we work. I can speak from my own personal experience. I know in my graduating class, there were so many individuals that worked hard and that did as much as they could, but given the circumstances, they were unable to reach a certain level of success. And I promise you, I'm not trying to make any excuses or to justify, maybe our inability to succeed the way that we want to succeed. But I think we can't deny the fact that there's certain aspects of this system that we live under that's unique to us as Blacks, and that prevents us from maybe excelling the way that we need to. But I agree with you, Twan. Like, we need to give it 100%. We need to work as hard as we possibly can. I think individuals like us have a personal responsibility to reach back into our communities, to, start mentorship programs, to do whatever we can to show and reveal to the youth that there is a chance. They do have the opportunity to succeed in whatever field of life that they want to go into. And we can even expose them to more of what's out there in our society and what's out there in the world. And so we do need to do that. And we do need to work hard as a people and not just hang on like excuses or make excuses for the reasons why we're not excelling. But it's just hard for me to say that, hey, if all of us worked hard, a greater majority of us would be in the middle class or would succeed in things of that nature. I think it's deeper than that. There's more profundity to it.
Yeah, just as again, a piggyback. You brought up in your statement, Antoine, where would you like to see us in the future? I personally would like to see us somewhere where if we can't get American history taught without the slants and divisiveness of racism that are taught in it now, then I would like to see us kind of standing up on our own and not segregating ourselves from American society, but finding a way to live within it and still increase. I mean, right now, Jewish people, what are the stereotypes about Jewish people in America right now? They're successful doctors, attorneys. They work jobs that make good money. They're not ashamed at all that they date, that there's, parents want them to date other Hebrew people. There's pride involved with it. And none of that pride is involved with any of the things that we would consider to be shallow. A lot of the things that we identify with are that we identify with as African Americans, as far as our stereotypes go, we're drawn to shallow things and, not very deep pursuits. So if we were able to change that, and it would take things like reaching out to the society and saying, hey, we want to re-educate ourselves. We want to take control of some of these negative influences on our society and also some of the mal effects of what we're living in right now, and make ourselves better. Then we can get past slavery. Then we can get that'll be the day where I'll say that we're over slavery. Whether or not white folks are still racist, it won't even matter. And I really don't even think it matters in this conversation. I think that slavery is it is to know ourselves. And when I look at the fact that other nations of people, other groups of people have thousands and thousands of years of history and experience to draw off of, and ours is chopped off at the experience of slavery, the more I think about that, the more I'll say we'll never get over it, because it is the birth of our people. The freeing us from slavery, you birthed a brand new people with no history shared amongst one another, other than we were in Africa, we were enslaved, and now we're free here.
All right, so I'll take it from there. And that's just the fact that, all right, so we are our own tribe. Let's say that, right? We have a connection definitely to Africa. We definitely have a birthright in Africa, right? But the beginning of African American history, it starts with slavery, right? So there was something before that, but now we're saying it starts here. This is the beginning. I agree with you there. But if we look at ourselves as a tribe, how does a tribe become successful? Well, it borrows from other tribes. And if you're doing the right thing, you're going to borrow the good parts of other people's culture, and you'll throw the other parts, the bad parts, away. So they can call me whatever. When I said before, the Asian guy, if you work like this Asian guy over here, we're assuming that the Asian guy is a hard worker. But we're assuming that the Mexican is a hard worker. That Asian guy could be lazy and unsuccessful. The Mexican could be lazy and unsuccessful, right? But there's something when people talk about Asian culture, you think, okay, these people are very commercial. They like to work, they're industrious, whatever else. We can borrow certain parts of that. That way we're not, just lingering in, or like, I don't know, if that's even a word. That way we're not just
wallowing.
That's the word. We're not wallowing in self-pity, or we're not wallowing in poverty. We're not wallowing all these in criminal mind, whatever. All the bad stuff in life, that's not going to happen to us as much if we can borrow what we know works. And a lot of European culture works, right? We're comfortable living in European style houses and European design neighborhoods, and we want to be in the very best place because it works. But we can take the parts that work and we can get rid of the parts that don't. We can go back to Africa. We can take the parts of cultures that work, because you don't belong to any specific tribe in Africa. You can borrow from all of them and just take what works. And we need to share. But how do you take that? And then you get people who think that, what I'm saying, dancing in the club and doing a whole lot of bad things. How do you get them to accept the good things in life, the discipline, whatever else? Because there's no other way to get success than through discipline and through, being able to. And hold on one second. This is my brother down in there now. Hey, Rodney, we're on the call right now.
Is this the wrong place to be on?
Yeah, I'll send you an invite. We're probably going to be on for like another. All right.
Hey,
what's going on? I'll send it to you too, C.
Go.
Hey, Twan.
It's C. That's C and Rodney. Go ahead, Dave. I'll let you. I'm gonna put them in the. Go ahead.
to answer your question, did you say in 20 years, or where would I like to see us? Where would I like to see us in the future?
Let me ask you, where would you like to see yourself, and where would you like to see Black people?
Okay, us as a community, I would like to see us have a culture that perpetuates success, right? And I think that the way for us to create a culture here in America that results in that, we need to, one, unify and organize. Like, that's required for us. I know some people say, well, white people ain't coming, unifying. They don't have nobody leading them. Well, they make up the majority, and they've already reached they're successful as a community. But for us, I think we do need some form of organization for us to excel. That's one. Two, I think we need some type of code of ethics. I don't know if it could be like Christianity or the Muslim faith or whatever it may be. We need a code of ethics to try to eradicate some of the socially inappropriate behaviors that exist within our community. That's two. Number three, I think we need to vote as a block. If we vote as a block, I think that gives us a little more power. And I think that we can essentially tell certain legislators, like, hey, if you want our support, here's our agenda, here are our expectations. If you can make that happen, then we will support you. And we will hold them accountable as well. So that's another thing. Four, I think we need to revolutionize our education system. And I've heard Antoinette talk about this in prior videos or podcasts that we have. We need to have an education system that includes our rich and unique history, that emphasizes the great inventors and the great people or individuals within our community, and that prepares our children for the jobs of the future. So an education system that consists of a STEM program that will ensure that our children understand computer science and computer engineering, because let's be honest, AI is the way of the future, artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So that's another thing. And then four, I think we need to work on our economy. That means we need to pool our funds and invest and support Black businesses, and particularly within our community, to ensure that we have the jobs and the revenue for our people so that we can be successful. I think that is a decent agenda that will get us to a culture that perpetuates success. And that's where I would like to see us. Now, as far as myself, that's a difficult question. I would like to be playing a pivotal role in what I just stated in some form of fashion. I would want to be a part of that organization that creates this type of change that I'm alluding to. And yeah, so that's where I would want myself to be positioned in the future.
Where do you see yourself living?
That's a difficult one. The wife, she wants to stay in the South, move back to Georgia. I would personally prefer to
invite
because I feel like living within an urban center, you can have a bigger effect on a bigger number of individuals. But we'll figure it out. But in the future, I personally see us staying in close proximity to some huge urban center that consist of a high percentage of our particular demographic, so that I can have that impact that I'm hoping I can have on our community.
Okay. You, Antoinette, what do you see yourself in 20 years?
20 years, I'd like to see more farms in urban centers. I'd like to see Black school implemented so that my son can take part and be part of the first class, and grow up knowing that his peers are going to help him to live. One of my biggest fears is having a situation like Aunt Sherry. She lost her son. He's 36. She was 64, and that was her only family that she had created. So I'd like to know that his peers were going to help me in my dream of keeping him safe and alive into his old age. I'd like to see the Black dollar. I like to see Black dollars recycling inside the Black community time and time and time again. I like to see our statistics and our stereotypes change for the positive, that more fewer Black people were in jail and dying from heart disease, and more of us were in church and building families. Like shortly after slavery, when we did have more Black families happening. I'd like to see like David said, I'd like to see us having our communities, more communities that are safe and filled with us and all the legal protections, so that we don't have to worry about the outside influences of the children of
Hi.
former slave owners, but instead we can
Let's
focus
see.
on
I
the
said
inside.
I wanted to say hi real quick, but I can't. I've got company. My mom and them are here, so I stay on for tonight. But I want
Ah,
to say hey, and I love you guys.
Love you too.
Love you.
Love you, Antoine.
love you.
Love you.
Love y'all too. All right.
Yeah. So overall, in my 20-year dream is that that this has grown and we've actually grown to accomplish something and look at and maybe even have a working Black economy that reaches all the way back out to Africa. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I see myself doing import export somewhere in Africa, spending 6 months on the continent, 6 months out there in Europe or in America or in the Caribbean. I like to actually see lines of communications between those two areas. Lines of communications, ships, airplanes going back and forth with Black products on them. I like to see African businesses owned by African people in Africa. I like to see Black businesses owned by Black people in America able to trade with those Black businesses. So, when you talk about free trade, let's have free trade amongst our African brothers. I like to see Black people traveling from country to country in Africa freely with one passport, one world passport for Black people. I like to see that. I like to see more choices for Black people as far as style and as far as not to say there's anything wrong with hip hop. Hip hop is in a pretty good state, but I think the whole idea of monolithic thought or voting as a block or thinking as a block is not correct. I think you need to vote your heart and how you feel about a subject, because you may be the only person that is right. And you're only a drop in the bucket. That's all you really are. So what we're talking right now, Rodney, I want to bring you in on the conversation. We started off by talking about the end state. The difference between the end state. At what point would you say that Black people have arrived? At what point will Black people be over slavery? Like, what does it take for you to consider Black people arrived or over it?
Okay. Are you asking me that right now?
Well, you can introduce yourself, and then if you want to answer the question, you can.
I've introduced myself last time for those who watch these videos consistently. I'm Rodney. I'm the older brother of Antoine and Antoinette, the cousin to David, a 16-year Army veteran, ITIL, PMP, certified software consultant, just doing different things, MBA. So I'm about to be 43, so I'm maybe a little older than everybody else here. Definitely older than everybody else here. But yeah, the concept of when will we be over it? To me, it doesn't work unless there's equality on all levels. Like if there's a certain percentage, when you look at numbers, because numbers don't lie. People will lie all day long. The theories and people will jump on the first thing that says, okay, this is it, and they'll jump on it. But when the numbers don't lie and they say percentage-wise, if there's 25% of Black people in America, there should be 25% of Black people in leadership positions in America. There should be 25% equal. And it shouldn't be something we have to make happen. It should be organic. When it's organic and it happens to that point just because of the fact that, you know what, people aren't looking at color. They're looking at, hey, I'm voting for the right person. Because if you let people vote based on if it's really truly no racial thing, nothing like that, then it would be equal. Everything, all the numbers would balance out. If it's not 25%, if there's 25% Black people, they might be 24, maybe 26, but it's always something within that a certain permutation of error. So for me, what?
I don't want to disturb your train of thought, but is being in the NBA a great achievement?
That's another question. Is it a great achievement? Yes, it is a great achievement.
Okay, so we are 13% of the population.
Right.
But we are about 75, 78% of the NBA.
Okay.
All right, so it's not equal. You're not always going to have equal outcomes.
Oh wait, no. I see where you're going with that. I see what you're trying to say, but it's a great achievement in one aspect of it. Yeah. But being the team owner is a greater achievement.
Hold
so
on.
What percentage are those?
You said that. Now.
No. But you're talking about you're looking at the players. You're looking at the slaves. Right. You're looking at the manual labor.
I ain't calling them slaves.
Yeah, they are. They're working for that money.
When we were growing up as kids, right? And Dad, did he sit us down, make us watch basketball, take us out, and make us play basketball? Did he say, "I want you guys to be the team owner"? Or was he excited about us being having a possibility of going to the NBA?
He was excited about us having a possibility of going to the NBA, and I'll tell you the reason why, too.
Okay, and then when we went out to try out for basketball at Rich Central, which was a majority black school, well, all the kids there in the bleachers, all trying out. I mean, we had hundreds of people trying out for damn 12 or 15 spots. Were they trying out to be the team owner? Or to get
Rich Central was majority black.
Or were they? Rich Central was majority black.
Yeah, by the time we were there, yeah.
And there was hundreds of people there trying out for 12 spots or 15 spots on the basketball team. Am I lying?
Sounds like a bad plan, huh? Sounds like a horrible plan. Who would do that? Only the people who are in the lowest position would go for those horrible plans, those horrible odds. Obviously.
It's not a horrible lie. All you have to do is say they're all are schools.
Say the numbers one more time, because we just said numbers don't lie. Well, I just said numbers don't lie. Say those numbers one more time. How many people are trying out for those 12 slots?
About 100.
100 people going for 12 slots. So what's your chance just in Rich Central getting that position? A 10% chance. Who would go for that 10% chance to be successful, other than the poorest people who have less options?
No, they have an option. They had all types of options. We had a chess club. We had all types of options. That's what they were going for because that's what they aspired to, because culturally that's what they wanted.
How much money you make from the chess? If you become a professional chess player, first of all, how many professional chess players out there? How much money you make from that?
I don't know. Let's look it up. I mean,
whatever it is, hey, there's not as many professional chess players as there are NBA players.
I don't know that. We don't know that it's true.
Culturally,
you're talking about, I get what you're saying, Antoine, but what you're talking about is going another direction more towards what do we teach our kids and where do we drive them? And that's a big point too. But what I'm talking about is in state. In the in state, guess what? There's going to be, if there's 25% black people in the world, there could be 25% black people in the NBA. The rest of them could be white. Who said white man can't jump? That's just a movie, right? Realistically, we're supposed to be equal. We're not supposed to. I heard somebody say a long time ago when I was a kid that black people have more fast twitch muscles and the white people have more it was a slow twitch muscles. So maybe we're better at sports, but I don't buy into all that crap. When it's really equal. Doctor, tell us.
Not to divert, because I don't want to go too far on the tangent, because I know you were kind of giving your thesis there, but I think that 400 years of enslavement and the type of physical duress that we were under has a lot to do with our success now in professional sports. And in fact, I think if we had more black individuals play tennis, play other sports, that we would probably excel in that area. Because from a biological standpoint, the amount of work that we did through those hundreds of years will ultimately have the impact, especially if you're a believer in epigenetics, it will have an impact on our genes and the phenotypic expression of those genes.
Most Africans play football, whatever else.
But they're not as athletic as us.
Yes, they are. Are you telling me? Look at how many people in the NFL right now have African last names. It's fucking killing the game. Who's on the cover of NBA 2K? The NBA dude from Milwaukee. I mean, so we have that.
It's hard to determine that
is from Africa. If you talk about the fastest people in the world.
Hey, you guys are talking at the same time. I can't hear either one of you. It's kind of chopping up.
The world, a lot of them are African. Like the fastest people in the world come from Ghana. They come from the West African nations. Yes.
Usain Bolt is from Jamaica.
He's from Jamaica, yes, but Jamaica's from where? From Africa.
The only reason.
Antoine. I hear what you're saying, but guess what? our fastest people in the Black America are probably in jail, so they don't get a chance to compete. Because we're in America. They put a lot of us in those jails.
The best long distance runners all have to be from Northeast Africa. Is that just, they're all from Ethiopia?
Those
right,
are long distance runners,
Kenya,
though. The type of work that we did in slavery did not require, like, you know, honestly, I think that it did have an impact, man. I mean, especially if you believe in the idea of epigenetics.
I'm not saying that.
I think that's why we're like really, from a physicality standpoint, we are in the upper echelon. Like, you could take a group of average Black people, take a group of average Africans, and I would conjecture that the group of average Black Americans probably would be, from an athletic standpoint, would be superior. Now, it's debatable.
Without a doubt. I remember, hold on 1 second. I was in going through OCS in Fort Benning, and we had a portion where we were doing like the MMA portion. What do they call it, Rodney? They don't call it MMA.
Mixed martial arts. They call it combatives, Army combatives.
Right. And I swear it was probably 9 Black officers in there. And I was the first one to go. And they went by weight, and I was going up against this white guy. And I broke his nose on accident. I didn't break his nose. His nose was just bleeding, right? So, but I won that match. Every match that was an interracial match, the Black person won. All of them. Until it got to the point where, you know, the second and third round, we were fighting each other. And I fought this real big brother. And he didn't want to, he said, "Bro, I don't want to hurt you, just give up." So but it was honest. I saw there, it was like, man, I don't want to think we're better at this fighting or we're better at sports, but we possibly are, right? Now, this is the scary part. This is the scary part, and this is a whole nother conversation. Is there a genetic thing behind any of it, right? Is there a genetic thing behind, like, if you look at Asians like to work long hours. Some of them seem to concentrate very hard on certain things, and they're really good at just, they might be really good at math, right?
I'm gonna give you an answer to this question. I'm not trying to dodge it, but there's nature and nurture involved. Like if you're breeding dogs, if you want to make a greyhound, but this is basically what happened to Black Americans. I think this is where David's going. If you're breeding greyhounds, or you come from a wolf, you take the ones that look a little more of the features you want. They want somebody big, they want somebody strong, they want somebody athletic, and they keep going until they get what they want. Eventually they have that. But at the same time, there is a level of what is that person doing with that? Like, there's some black people who are straight nerds that have never gone for a run. They've never gone and played against any sport, and they'll get out there and suck just like everybody else. There's some white people who take fitness serious, and they'll go in there and they'll crush the gym, and they play sports. There's a guy on YouTube called The Professor. He's a basketball player. He can beat most people I know. Like, just watch him. He can beat most people I know that I've ever played with. He can probably beat them. So, I mean, the race is a part of it. There's a little bit of nurture, but a little bit of nature, but there's a lot of nurture in a lot of this stuff. And even when you're dealing with, you say, Asian people who like math and stuff like that, if you look at their family situations and what their parents are teaching them to do, just like mom and dad, the dad was like, hey, if you're going to be successful, this basketball is an easy way for you to make $1 million. So you can make some changes in your life and maybe some other people's lives. With them, it's more like, hey, you could be a lawyer. You could be a doctor. With some of the Jewish people who teach their kids to own businesses. Jewish people teach their kids to save money and do things like that. I mean, and this, I'm not trying to be racist or anything like that, but this is like from what I've learned from talking to different people. Yeah. They have different things that are important to them that they pass down to their kids. And that's why I want us to pass down to our kids financial management, understanding, which we really, mom and dad didn't give us that to a certain level. Like I got most of my financial understanding probably from outside of that. Even though dad right now is a CPA, he tried to talk to me a little bit as an adult, but as a child, it was more so, you know, I watched mom and dad with the credit cards and see how they got that. Oh, you can buy stuff, you got a credit card. That's what I learned. So guess what I did? I got credit cards, I went and bought stuff. But I mean, there is a lot of nurture that supports every stereotype that we have. There's nurture out there behind it.
That's true.
I'm glad you went there because I didn't want to go there because they already labeled me as that person that was way to the right. They're trying to Kanye West, Uncle Tom, goddamn Tom sold me. And I don't mind that because I think all those guys are geniuses. But I will just give you this. If you feel like because we're saying that there's a genetic background to any of this, that's something that's bad, it's not. Because at the end of the day, as my brother said, like, what are you doing with it? One, and two, how much of a difference does it really make? I.e., if I can jump 6 inches higher than David, how much of a difference does that really make? It doesn't really make that much of a goddamn difference. If this Asian guy can do a math problem, goddamn, a third of a second faster than me, as long as we both get to the same math problem, it doesn't make a difference. You know, so it's not like, I don't think anybody is incapable of being a scientist or anybody is incapable of being a doctor or anything else. You just have to go out there and put in the work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, you do have to take into consideration both things, nurture and nature. So you can have the genetic makeup to be a great athlete or a professional basketball player, but if you don't put in work, if you don't have the correct like management or supporting cast around you, you might not make it. And then you also may have the intellectual ability from a genetic standpoint to be an physicist. But if you're not put in the correct situation, you might not make it. But there may be somebody else who, from a genetic standpoint, they don't have, they're not on the same level as you. But like you said, if they put in the work, if they're in the right situation, they can still excel. So, yeah, I agree 100% with that. Yeah.
And then, too, like you said with that, this is the other way I look at that, because even if you have the mental capacity, I don't think that's the mental part. I don't think that's necessarily racial. I think that goes across all. There's black people who are smart as crap. There's Chinese people, white people, all different races that are smart as crap. The question is, who's going to get the nurture? Is it most likely to get the nurture in America? Is it going to be a smart white dude, a smart Asian dude, smart black dude? I think the problem that we're still dealing with is sometimes you get a really smart black dude and he's not really getting the nurture that he needs because he's got people pumping. Like you said, Antoine, they had options to go play chess. They had options to go play golf. But he's got his peers, number one, say, hey, that's whack. That's white stuff. That's whatever. And then he's got the world saying, hey, rap is where it's at. Basketball is where it's at. So this smart guy, if he's not curious, if he doesn't keep that aspect, if his parents can't afford to send him to the right school, if they don't give him the right nourishment in that level too, he's just a waste. He's all his thoughts, all his intelligence is not being used. Now, yes, that could happen to some white people. It could happen to some Asian people as well. But I think the problem is in America, it happens overwhelmingly more in the black community. And I don't have numbers to back that up, so I can't say for sure. But this is what I feel about why, we're still kind of dealing with some of that slavery stuff. There are opportunities for everybody, but I think it's a little harder sometimes for us to get to them.
And you can think about it like this too. If two fat people have a baby, is the baby going to be fat? I would say it's a 95% chance that the baby in the first couple of years of his life is going to be fat. If you have two athletes have a baby, is the baby going to be athletic? I would say it's a pretty good chance that baby's going to be athletic at some point in its life. That doesn't mean it's going to go to the NBA or whatever else, but it's going to have an advantage. And maybe it's getting both of the advantages. Maybe it's nature and its nurture is getting. Maybe that fat baby is fat because the parent is feeding it Twinkies and putting soda in his bottle. Or maybe it's fat because, the microbiome that the mother has in her stomach is a fat microbiome. That's something immediately as she has a child, that child gets that microbiome over his face. It swallows the microbiome. That biome goes into his stomach, and it's going to be fat because of something more than just nurture, right? It could be a little bit of both. So what I'm saying is, do we? You have something called when you breed for better people.
Eugenics?
Eugenics progenics is the word I'm looking for. So eugenics is bad. Eugenics is when you sterilize people so they can't have babies.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You say, you know what, I want to have this type of baby, so I'm gonna find a spouse or somebody to generate with or make a baby with that has the same whatever that I have or has this quality, and then you breed for that. That's progenics. But a lot of people still look at progenics like it's something bad. But I would think when it comes to intelligence, You can do that for children, right? If you're looking to have an intelligent baby, like and I think part of it is just because we kind of, if you're a smart person, you're more easily
attracted
to other smart people, right? So when you're looking for your wife, you're making sure that she's intelligent. Likewise, like none of us married dummies, you know. But if you're already in a situation where you're impoverished, or you know you're not in a very high socioeconomic class yourself, you deal with other people in that same sphere, and maybe they also don't have certain qualities or whatever else, and it could be genetic, could be nature, nurture, but that's who you marry up with, and that's what you produce. So at the end of the day, like, we have to be able to transfer, and that's where it's kind of like there's that disconnect between, we were talking about this earlier, Ronnie, the black middle class and the black lower class, and how do you infuse some of that juice, whatever you want to call it, some of whatever's making the black middle class work. It shouldn't be that the black whole is led by how the black lower class thinks. They should not be running things, right? I don't think. I think that whatever's working is what you take, as if what Ye West said. He's like, you know, I'm a billionaire. He said, well, you're not like us, Ye. You know, you're different because you're a billionaire. He's like, yeah, I think it's important you know how a billionaire thinks. Like, it's important to take the way you guys are talking, the way you guys are thinking, and making sure that the people who need it get that, because that's a disconnect.
Yep, exactly. I agree 100%.
Yeah,
and that's where I think we got it from our parents working hard, you know, getting us to school and doing certain things for us. I think a big part of it is family. You know, it's because we had a very strong family. Like, I'm talking about not just mom and dad, because it was like everybody. Mom and dad was helping everybody out whenever they could, and aunts and uncles were helping everybody whenever they could. And you're keeping that family, and the whole family has a very business type mindset, a very like success mindset. So I think if you have that and you can maintain that for your kids and kind of spreads out that way. And then we have to have circles where we're outside of our family, where we meet up and link up with other people and kind of who are like-minded. Because the more like-minded people you have together, the more power you have to do things. I mean, I've noticed in the last couple of months, I've been meeting up with Uncle Augie talking about business, meeting up with you guys talking about business and different things, meeting up with one of my sister-in-laws has a boyfriend. He's got his own business. I talk to him about things. As I do these type of conversations, it sparks ideas in my mind that I might have been thinking about, dang, Netflix, Hulu, you know, just being real. Because if I don't keep myself focused and stay in the right type of mindset, it's easy to get distracted nowadays. You got internet everywhere. You got the cell phones. You might want to have a business idea, but then you still got your job. You still got, you know, a wife. You got kids you got to worry about. So it's very easy to get distracted and kind of just be all over, just doing a little bit of everything. But things like this keep me focused. What is my ultimate goal? What do I want to get to? You know, and I think that's a big part of it. We have to stay focused. We have to pick a goal, make it happen, show people how to do it. You know, get people to support other people. You know, there's a lot to it. It's almost like a political game, man.
Yeah, and you know, I agree totally, especially with the idea of community and collectivism, because you know, right now the predominant socio-political philosophy is liberal humanism. It's all about the individual. It's about self. It's about your own personal success. But I think it's time for us to move beyond that individualism and enter into collectivism. So it's about your family. It's about your children. It's about your extended family. It's about your community. What are we doing to work towards bettering us as a collective? And right. I think that's so crucial. And to be completely honest, liberal humanism is about to be out the picture in a little bit, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence. I'm telling you, man, like we're going to be using AI to work most of the jobs, to do so many things that humans typically do. And when that happens, then we have to ask the question, well, what happens with self? What happens with that person and how you feel and things of that nature? I think as time progresses, it's really going to be more about the collective. So right. We should start moving in that direction anyways. And not to go too far off on a tangent, But we need to make sure our community has STEM programs in their schools, and we need to get our children involved in computer science and computer engineering, because that is the way of the future. And we need to be in it. We need to have some level of understanding within that particular area in order to thrive in the future. Like that is so big.
No, that's
I got a question for y'all.
Because, but not just, hey, let's make sure they're doing this, but how many? Do we want a million? Do we want 500,000? Like, what's acceptable? And have that say, this is what we're looking for. Then let's have a phased approach to get to it as a group of people. Like you said before, that has to be like a whole white paper written on what needs to be done to get us to, like, it has to be certain benchmarks, right? To say, we need this many doctors. We need this many of this. And it may not be equitable to, other races. And that may take time, right? But at least we say, hey, our goal is to have this many college graduates, this many STEM professionals, this many doctors, this many dentists, this many people working in this industry. Then I think at that point, we're talking about true measures of success. And then we talk about being over it.
Hey, I got a question, guys, for you guys. Because we're talking about, family or we're talking about actually what's going to be like in the future to be over it. I think family is a big part of that. How do you guys feel about arranged marriages or possibly going back to arranged marriages?
I think that's an excellent idea, and it's overdue.
I think it doesn't even necessarily have to be parents getting arranged marriages, but if we have like a family that reaches out to our friends and we know who's available like outside that might be good people that we can vet and bring in and say, okay, look, this is my sister. You don't necessarily have to marry her, but here's an introduction. What do you guys think about each other? And then they get to know each other. Like, I'm thinking about like ways that we can make sure that we build families that can stay together. Because I think that's a big part of it, especially on us. We didn't have that in slavery days, and I think that took a toll. And then even after slavery days, it took a toll because we had fathers leaving in situations like that, babies out of wedlock. And now we're still kind of going in that route a little bit. But I think if we were able to build solid, strong families that could stay together, that could raise children, keep them educated, fed, wealthy, explain life to them in a professional way, where basketball is always an option, but it's not the plan. Where you can do other things. You can be so much more than. I think that would be a good way to make sure that things happen that way. If we could build families that stay together, that last, that we cut that divorce rate. What would it be like if the divorce rate in America was 75%, but in the Black community it was like maybe 10%? How do you guys think that would affect us?
Yeah, I think it's extremely crucial that we prioritize and figure out like what things are most important in a mate. So, we would have to make sure that character and, moral state is like on the top of the list and, things of that nature. And also we would have to be careful to not, how could I say this? I want to try to articulate this correctly. But what I don't want is for us to negate possible individuals who could marry someone in our family just on the basis of their economic standing or where they're at in life.
Okay, I thought you meant because they ugly. So we already do that. Like if they ugly,
it's like, you want someone. You would prefer someone successful, but as long as they have the potential and as long as their head is on right and they have the character traits and things of that nature, then I think that would be a promising candidate for like, for a spouse, for one of our loved ones. But I agree with you. I think maybe we are well overdue for that, and we need to start arranging these marriages, and we would have more success in our community if we did start kind of going towards that.
And it's quiet over there. I thought you might have more to say.
No, she was all for the arranged marriages. She was like, yes.
I'm here.
Bring in my man.
No, I think the arranged marriages, I think that's actually ingenious. I think We had a little bit of that during the Black Renaissance when we started doing debutante things and whatnot, and trying to kind of stand on our own 2 feet and what it could represent, especially since we're going through such a hard time with relationships as African Americans, because with so many men in lockup, you know, it's rare to find one that's find somebody like the men in our family who have put in the work for their education, who were raised in Christ, who were focused and centered on the right things and not on the hip hop media version of who Black people should be. So if we were able to, if we wanted to perpetuate that through society, then it would be very advantageous to us to say, okay, well, we're not only going to help our family members get into those situations, but we're going to support those marriages, and we're going to ask the people in our society to act the right way about those marriages, so you get fewer females willing to be side chicks. You get more men who have that feeling of it's a necessity for me to be there in my child's life on a daily basis, the way that mothers are there.
What about love?
What about love? Because marriage was not created for love. That's the biggest thing. Marriage was never about love in the beginning. For the first however many thousands of years marriage existed, it was about getting rid of extra females and extra mouths in your household, and in doing so, getting you some cattle. You know, I got all these people around here with no muscles, but wombs. They got wombs to carry you some babies, and those babies might be boys.
So what do you
get
think
them out of my house? You feed her. Then
I think love comes, man. When you got somebody that you got, the love comes. If you learn somebody, take some time. If you got somebody that's committed, as long as they're committed and they're not, because there's a lot of temptation out there. Let's be real. There's temptation everywhere.
Okay, but so get my point. If it's temptation out there, you have excess women, you have fewer men. You know, in Africa, a lot of cultures, they allow for men to have multiple wives. So what do you guys think about polygamy? I mean, this is real. Like, you got certain brothers out there doing it right now. What's his name? Brother Polite, he's doing it.
Yeah, bro, Polite.
Akon, he's doing it. So what do you think, Rodney?
I'm married. I have nothing against having, you know, I guess if there's more men than women and more women than men, I have nothing against, you know, having multiple wives. I can't do that right now because my wife wouldn't agree to that. That's the key. If your wife would agree to it and you want more than one wife, hey, the law right now as it stands is shaky. Everything they first the law said, gay people can't get married. Now they can. So laws can always change. But if you're a man and you want more than one wife and you find more than one woman that wants to marry you at the same time and they're willing to do it, I got no problem with it. I don't even care about my family. If a couple of women in my family want to get into a polygamous relationship because that's what they want to do, I'll support it. I mean, as long as it's a committed relationship where people are loving and working together, I got no problem with it. I got nothing against it.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like me personally, because the way that I was raised and the Christian principles that I hold on to, I would not practice polygamy. But if people wanted to do that, I see nothing wrong with that. Be completely honest, I think the only reason
in the Bible have multiple wives.
Say it again.
David in the Bible have multiple wives.
In the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, they kind of changed their idea. I mean, the idea of marriage was kind of changed, and it became, just exclusively between one man and one woman. And I think there's actual scripture that backs that up and backs up the fact that Jesus kind of pushed that idea as well. So, because I again, me personally, I wouldn't practice in it, but if other people wanted to, I think it's fine because everybody's not Christian. You have people of other faith, and people have different ideas. And I just don't see anything. I don't see anything wrong with it if that's
okay. Now,
believes.
That's an interesting idea, right? And I had a similar idea, right? But it worked out better for females, right? Where women kind of put men into it. We take over the finances, okay? We take over the job. All right. And then we collect sperm samples from like The Rock, Idris Elba, guys we really like those, right? Every female gets a mixed sperm sample once a month. If you want to get pregnant that month, you get the best sperm to choose from. You know, if you want to mate, you can go and rent one from the thing, or you can use the toys at your own house. I'm just saying, if we're going to have the society where there's men with lots of wives and a whole harem, we also should have another society with the popsicle, freeze it with the popsicle idea, the superstar.
Well,
popsicle.
you know what, Antoinette? Like with the advancements we're making in biogenetics and genetic engineering, like who knows in the future you might be able to pick particular traits and genes.
Man, 30 years ago they could have executed my idea. 30 years ago they could have taken the best sperm and made sperm popsicles. Okay.
This is getting a little bit off topic, but there's this stuff called CRISPR, where there's basically you can edit your own genes while you're alive. And I'm thinking that our birth rates are going to end up dropping anyway. We're not going to have, in about 20, 30 years, not going to be as many babies born, but people are going to be living pretty much forever. They're going to fix everything that's wrong with you with this CRISPR stuff. They're going to go in and say, hey, you got cancer here. It's going to attack your cancer DNA. It'll be dead. You want to live? Your cells are dying because, the lysine was up. We'll turn that off too here. You can live forever now. Like, I got a feeling something like that's happening.
Hey, Rodney, they're actually going to be able to identify those genes even prior to a child being born. Prior to, they'll be able to pick out those genes and say, all right, there's a presence of this multiple myeloma gene in your DNA. Let's go ahead and remove it and put this gene in place. And
did you guys not see movies like Repo,
like sci-fi, but this is
or Attica?
Yeah,
but see the movies.
I saw those. I did see those movies, and they were a little scary. But what I see now happening is because this CRISPR is new, and because they're making it available to everybody, you can go in and order a CRISPR kit where you can come home and figure things out and do whatever you want to your own body, whatever. Because people learn about biochemistry and different things like that, it's going to get to a point where pretty much anything that's wrong with people can be fixed for very cheap. And then we're gonna fill this earth up to the point where we got to leave the planet. Then everybody's gonna be jumping on Elon Musk, like, dude, get us off of here. And they're gonna send us on long flights.
Rodney, I think only wealthy people are gonna have access to it, and they're gonna create a superhuman race. And I think how we look at Neanderthals and earlier Homo species. That superhuman race gonna look at Homo sapiens like us and be like, man, look at those lesser forms.
All right, we will wrap up the broadcast portion of this. I'm gonna ask everybody just their final thoughts, and it could be on whatever we spoke about today, or if you want to go a little bit wider, you can. We'll start with you, and then we'll move right to David, Rodney, and on in.
You say you started with me?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Ladies first.
Okay, my wrap-up thought would be this. Black people aren't over slavery because slavery is not over. We do have some solutions in mind that I hope that we'll be working on, like Black School and recycling Black, and figure out more ways to recycle the Black dollar in the community. I think that overall, we should be careful when it comes to genetic screening, we don't want to become the lower class genetically on top of everything else. So we should be careful how fast we go in that train. And prearranged marriages sound awesome. And it should definitely be a part of the culture that we form.
All right, sister. Good to hear from you. Love you. Hold the line. Go ahead, Dave. Right.
Yeah, so I guess my closing statement will be this. I think that we'll be able to, quote unquote, get over slavery, get over the black codes and the Jim Crow era once there's true equality present within our current socio-political system, or at least once there's a fair shake at opportunities within our society. But until that happens, it's going to be difficult for us to let go because, again, some of the same oppressive tactics that was present within those eras still persist today. So how can you? It's almost like a constant reminder of our past, the fact that we're still dealing with some of the things that we're dealing with. Ultimately, I think there's definitely a certain level of personal responsibility within our community. As I stated previously, we need to change some of our socially inappropriate behavior patterns or eradicate them and replace them with more appropriate behaviors. We need to unify more and come together. And we need to invest in ourselves, in our community, so we can get the economic success that we're looking for. So it's going to be a battle on two fronts. one, us creating the change within or intrinsically, and then two, us continuing to fight against the inequalities that currently exist within our socio-political system. And I look forward to being a part of that fight.
All right. Okay, so just from my perspective, money is power, money is choice, and I think if you want really to have equality, you got to have equal money. Otherwise, there's no real equality, no choice, and not just equal money now, but equal positions, so that the money stays, somewhat equal in the future. If you have even if they gave everybody in America $10,000 right now, if all the black people are going to take all their money and go spend it in all the white establishments, and then their money's gone, the white people invest their money, that's not equality. It's not necessarily due to, it even could be due to slavery because of the training or how things have been brought up so far. So if you have a situation where the finances flow equally based on how the race and how the population is set up, I think that would be fair. We'd be over it. Or even if you could take away race, if you can take away the black, the white, and just say, okay, people, and not just as far as like the words, if you could take it away as far as like color, like eventually, if all the races in the mix forever, everybody be tan. Everybody be tan with somewhat large but pointy noses, and somewhat eyes with a certain way. We'd all be similar, like the same. And even then, we find ways to divide up. But then you can't say, okay, well, the blackness is holding you back, because everybody's got a little bit of slavery in them. Everybody's got a little bit of Black American in them. So that's the way that's probably not going to happen no time soon. So we have to find a way to financially be equal, have our own, and be able to have them buy from us and we buy from them, and everything kind of flow. At certain levels in the world, I feel like there are places where we're equal. Maybe even we're coming out a little bit ahead, like you said, the NBA. But then at the same time, when you go one step higher, checking the owners out, it's still not equal. It's the numbers just aren't there. But I think we'll get there eventually. Eventually, we can get to that point as we raise our education level, raise our aspirations for our children. And I think the good thing is, and this is maybe a little light at the end of the tunnel, kids nowadays, there are a lot of kids I see growing up, black kids right now, that don't experience the same level of, or maybe they're not feeling it, the same level of unfairness that I felt growing up. So, and that could be a good thing. Maybe there's some change coming down the line that will show and prove that, they'll go do different things. My son asked him what he wants to be. He's about to graduate high school. He said a marine biologist.
Nice.
I never would have thought of that coming out of high school. It just wasn't even an option, like marine biology. What? I say, why you want to do that? Well, I want to understand the ocean and how it's affecting our future. And wow, like, okay, that's beautiful. So I'll leave you guys with that. That's maybe in the future things will change as long as we train our children finance, business, be the owner. Don't be a borrower. Those type of things.
Right. Yeah. You know why? Because we have to do that so we can have access, and that's something that Kanye West said again. He was arguing about Louis Vuitton and everybody not giving him a chance. He wasn't really talking about, we don't have the access to make our own T-shirts. He was talking about the access to their systems in order to have that production so he can distribute on that level and be thought of at that level. And a lot of people gave him a lot of kickback because of that, and that's fine. But, whenever you're dealing with talking about like a racist system, then you're talking about something that's more subjective. It's harder to define, and you're chasing it. And plus, you're waiting on somebody else. If I'm waiting for this guy to stop being racist, you might be waiting forever, because people are always going to be prejudiced. Even if it's not about skin color, it'll be about something else. Somebody's always going to prejudge somebody else. So the system will never be perfectly equal. There's going to be rules to the system. You have to figure those rules out. And you have to be like the Trojan horse, get inside the system and then change it. Right? So don't get who you are, but get inside that system and make changes at your level and help people out that, I hate to say help people out who look like you, but that's kind of how things work. Let's do that. They never stop making money, right? They never stop making money. However, of the 1,500 billionaires on the planet, 12 of them are black, and that's the highest that it's ever been. In 2017, we had 12 billionaires. I think the latest one to join is Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is now worth $1.7 billion. And a lot of people feel like we've lost Michael Jordan. And I think Michael Jordan and Kanye West have a lot in common, but Michael Jordan just doesn't talk nearly as much. But it's the train of thought is the same, right? So we have to figure out, in closing, we started talking about the end state. We have to realize that we don't want to be in a constant state of feeling oppressed. We don't want to be in a constant state of feeling angry. If you feel that way right now, okay, but how do we come out of that? You figure out what that definition is to you, how you define that, and then you start working toward that change. And don't, when you look at your brother and your sister and you're thinking, okay, well, if they don't think exactly like me, then we're going to have an issue, or he's an Uncle Tom, or she's this and she's that, she's Conan. We have to be able to let that go, because what we'll find out when we start looking at people's end state is most people want the exact same thing. All right. And I think that no, we're not going to get over slavery in the next 20 years. But I do believe in the next 20 years, and within the next year over year, we're doing better. I want to see this black middle class go from 40% to 50% and beyond. Are we going to get everybody there? More than likely not. And lastly, what I'll say is I want the black population in America, I want them to have more of a desire. I know it's not for everybody, but I want people to start having more of a desire to make that connection with black people in the Caribbean, with black people in South America, and with black people in Africa, and with people all over the world. I want you to love everybody, all right? I love everybody, but I want that special connection to help lift other black people who are on my economic level or below, help lift them up. And that we're going to close. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank Rodney, my older brother, very intelligent. David gave so much to the conversation today, always does. I appreciate what you brought, and Antoinette, who brought the female perspective. And hopefully we get a few more females on here over the next couple of weeks. Thank you. I don't know.
Sorry for being late, guys. You know, I stay busy on the weekend.
Wife was shopping.
Oh, yeah. All right, love you guys.
Love you all.
All right, love you all.
Hold the line. Hold the line.